Hello friends, today we'll be talking about the reasons behind the formation of the Khilafat movement. As I earlier mentioned in my introductory video, which is an overview on the Khilafat movement, we have talked about what it was, what the Khilafat movement actually was, so you can go and check that out. Now there was not just one reason behind its formation, there were several reasons, so you got to keep that in mind. Firstly, there were deep-seated fears in the hearts of the Muslims. What sort of fears? They were fearful that the West was mistreating the Muslims all over the world, Muslim states. For example, what was happening to Afghanistan and Persia. Persia is the old name for Iran. Russia and Great Britain were brutally, dividing those territories amongst themselves, with a little care being given to the population of living there, in Afghanistan and Persia. Similar was being done all over the world, to the Muslim states. For example, in Africa as well, Morocco, Egypt, and all the other, Muslim states, they were being divided by the West. Now, the Muslims thought that the British would do the same thing, with Turkey as well. So they had that fear in their minds. The Muslims also had believed that the British were pursuing a policy of instilling fear in the hearts of the Muslims against the Hindus. And by doing so, they were trying to gain the cooperation. The British were trying to regain the cooperation of the Muslims. However, that was not the case. The opposite was happening. The Muslims were being pushed away from the British because of this policy that they were pursuing. Now, there were many Muslims who had joined the British army, but once they discovered that the British were fighting a war, that is the First World War, and in that war they were fighting against Turkey, the seat of the Muslim unity, the Ottoman Empire, and they had their attachment with it. So, they started withdrawing their support from the British army. Now, what happened is the Muslims also started to fear that the decline of the Turkish Empire, which was very evident by the end of the First World War, or towards the close of the First World War, would have a direct impact on the political strength of the Indian Muslims, and they did not want that happening. So, as a result of that, they started to organize an opposition, and that resulted in the formation of the Khilafat movement. Now, let us look at another reason. The First World War, the world was at a war, which is called as the First World War. And what was happening with Turkey? Let's have a look at it. Now, there were two groups that were fighting the war, Triple Alliance and Triple Entente. Now, the Triple Alliance had in it, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and also Italy, whereas Great Britain, Russia, and France, they were part of Triple Entente. Now, the British wanted a lot of Indian troops, not just to fight against Turkey, but also in their army, so that, they had to dig huge trenches during the First World War, and for that, a lot of manpower was required. So, they were enlisting a lot many troops from their colonies. But as we saw that Ottoman Empire was close, to the hearts of the Muslims of the subcontinent, so many of the Indian troops, they started to withdraw their support from the British army. At this point, the British Prime Minister, he made a promise that whatever happens at the end of the war, meaning whatever, whether, they win the war or they lose the war, the rights of the Khalifa would always be respected. And the Turkish Empire would be maintained, meaning it will not be dismembered or divided. Seeing that, the promise being made, the result was thousands of Muslims started to join the forces. And we also discussed that, when we were doing our overview video, that there were, these Ali brothers, Maulana Shaukat Ali and Maulana Muhammad Ali Jauhar, who started campaigning against, the Indian forces who were joining the British army. As a result, they were arrested, to crush this opposition. Now let's look at what was happening at the end of the war. At the end of the war, you come to terms, you start drawing treaties, or, you sign agreements with the losers. So the people who had lost was the Triple Alliance. That is, Germany had lost. And who was fighting alongside Germany? It was Turkey. I forgot to mention that. So you see, if Turkey was fighting again, alongside Germany, so there's a theory that your enemy's friend is always your enemy, right? So obviously, Turkey also turned into an enemy for Great Britain, and Great Britain was fighting against Turkey. Now, what happened at the end of the war, when treaties were being drawn out, Germany had to sign a treaty, and that treaty was called as the Treaty of Versailles. Now, according to this treaty, Germany was to be divided. It was demilitarized. Many of its coal areas were taken away or snatched away from it. It had to pay huge indemnities for the losses incurred during the war to the Allies as well. This seeing what was happening with Germany, a fear gripped the Muslims of the subcontinent. They started to fear that the same thing would happen to the Ottoman Empire as well. Now, the question of the Ottoman Empire, this question, that whether the same thing would happen to the Ottoman Empire, if yes, this was very unjust. And for that, they started to organize a plan, and that plan was, to form the Khilafat movement. Now let's talk about, supposing if this comes as a question, that is, what were the reasons for the formation of the Khilafat movement? And it's a 7-mark question, so you know that you have to divide your answer into 3 paragraphs and then write a concluding line in the end. So in the first paragraph, you can talk about the fears that the Muslims had in their hearts. We discussed that earlier, about how the West was treating the Muslim states. Then you can talk about the feeling in the second paragraph of the Muslims. That is, they felt that if the Ottoman Empire disintegrated or declined, this would have a direct impact, a political setback on the Muslims of the subcontinent, and they did not want to see that happening. Then thirdly, you can talk about the First World War and what had happened with Germany as a result of the war. The Treaty of Versailles can be discussed here. So looking at that, they felt that, or they feared that, the same treatment would be meted out to Turkey as well. So they started to organize an opposition which became known as the Khilafat movement. So it's very simple if you look at it that way and remember it that way. Now, with this, I'll conclude. If this video was beneficial, please give me a thumbs up, do subscribe to my channel, and share this video with your friends. Till my next video, I'm Nida Umer signing off. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.